as the world shifts beneath our feet. Today's headlines remind us that power, politics, and policy are no longer played by the old rules. Russia's position in the war in Ukraine has hardened, refusing to retreat or concede, even as global condemnation intensifies. Its defiance fuels a growing East-West divide, testing the strength of international diplomacy and alliances forged in a different time. Meanwhile, the United States President Donald Trump, positioning himself as a global negotiator and protector of American sovereignty, has reignited his bold tariff strategy, this time with greater intensity. These sweeping tariffs aimed at recalibrating global fairness and global trade is marketed as tools of fairness, leverage, and strength. But behind the rhetoric lies a more complex reality. Rising costs, deepening trade imbalances, and ripple effects that are already straining economies from Europe to Asia and threatening to choke fragile markets across Africa. Now, at what cost does economic dominance come? And who bears the weight of power games between giants? Well, today's coverage spans a tense global landscape, one where military confrontations blur into political brinksmanship and economic policies spark diplomatic fallout. From war zones in Eastern Europe and Gaza to economic recalibrations in Washington and political instability in parts of Africa, the world is shifting on its axis. Well, I am Star Smart, and this is the Flash News. Let's begin. Good evening and welcome back. We begin in the Middle East, where internal divisions are emerging within Israel's leadership regarding the next phase of its military campaign in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is reportedly considering a full military conquest of the Gaza Strip. However, according to several sources familiar with closed-door discussions, the Israeli military leadership, including Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi, has advised against a full-scale ground occupation. Military officials are said to be concerned about the operational complexity and long-term consequences of reoccupying Gaza, warning it could lead to high troop casualties, ongoing insurgencies, and increased regional instability. Instead, the military is reportedly recommending continued targeted strikes against Hamas infrastructure and leadership, coupled with limited ground operations. The Israeli government has not yet made a final decision, but the debate reflects growing pressures both internally and internationally as the war enters a new and uncertain phase. Gaza continues to face intense bombardment and humanitarian conditions remain critical, with international agencies calling for more sustained access for food aid delivery. Turning now to the United States when it comes to the war with Gaza and Israel, we see federal authorities have indicted a suspect in the killing of 2 Israeli embassy staff members earlier this year. The attack, which occurred outside a diplomatic residence in Maryland, resulted in the deaths of 2 Israeli nationals. According to the United States Department of Justice, the suspect has been charged with multiple offenses, including federal hate crimes and murder. Now, the motive behind, based on evidence submitted to the court, was allegedly anti-Semitic in nature. The indictment marks a significant moment in the investigation, and legal proceedings are now underway. Israeli officials have welcomed the development, which underscores the continued cooperation between the United States and Israel on diplomatic security and law enforcement matters. Meanwhile, in Washington, the Trump administration is also preparing for direct engagement with both Russia and Ukraine in a bid to reduce tensions and potentially pave the way towards peace negotiations. According to officials familiar with the planning, President Trump is expected to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Geneva within the next week. A follow-up meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is also reportedly being arranged. with the possibility of a trilateral framework being discussed. Now, these diplomatic moves come as the war in Ukraine continues into its fourth year, with casualties mounting and international fatigue growing over the prolonged conflict. The administration has not yet disclosed the specific agenda for the talks, but issued related to ceasefire arrangements, territorial disputes, and humanitarian access are expected to feature prominently. Now, while reactions from international observers have been mixed, the White House has signaled that it views direct diplomacy as essential in breaking the current stalemate. As preparations for these high-level talks advance, the situations on the ground in Ukraine remains volatile. Russian forces are intensifying drone operations and attempting to divide key cities in southern Ukraine. Now we turn deeper into the war in Ukraine, where the Russian military is intensifying operations aimed at gaining control over parts of the country's south this time. Ukrainian officials report that Russian forces have launched coordinated attacks targeting key infrastructure in the Kherson region. Drones have been deployed to strike bridges, communication lines, and military checkpoints, particularly around the city of Kherson and its surrounding access roads. Military analysts say that the goal appears to be twofold: to isolate Ukrainian forces from critical supply routes and to fragment territorial control by dividing southern Ukraine into disconnected zones. Satellite imagery and independent monitoring groups have confirmed increased drone activities and damage to transportation corridors in the region. The city of Kherson, once briefly under Russian occupation in the early stages of the war, has remained a strategic flashpoint throughout the conflict. Ukraine has reinforced its position in the area, but the renewed offensives has forced civilians to evacuate once again, with local authorities warning of deteriorating humanitarian conditions. In the north and east, shelling continues in Donetsk and Kharkiv, though front lines there have remained largely unchanged in recent weeks. Now, as international attention shifts to the prospects of diplomacy through upcoming summits involving the United States, Russia, and Ukraine, developments on the battlefield continue to shape what is or isn't possible at the negotiation table. And so the question remains, can diplomacy end a war that refuses to pause long enough for peace to begin?
I'm Janine Pirro, the United States Attorney. Welcome. Our community today is reeling as a result of one person's actions. Two families now are left to grieve for dreams that will never be realized. And as I speak right now, there is an individual who is being presented in court and charged with various crimes. 31-year-old Elias Rodriguez of Chicago, Illinois, is now charged by complaint after his initial appearance before U.S. Magistrate Judge Matthew Sharbaugh with the following: murder in the first degree for the murder of 30-year-old Yaron Levshinsky, a foreign official and official guest of the United States. Mr. Levshinsky was here on official business for the State of Israel. The defendant Rodriguez is also charged with 2 counts of murder in the first degree for both Yaron Levshinsky along with 26-year-old Sarah Lynn Milgram of Kansas. I'm Janine Pirro, the United States Attorney. Welcome. Our community today is reeling as a result of one person's actions. Two families now are left to grieve for dreams that will never be realized. And as I speak right now, there is an individual who is being presented in court and charged with various crimes. 31-year-old Elias Rodriguez of Chicago, Illinois, is now charged by complaint after his initial appearance before U.S. Magistrate Judge Matthew Sharbaugh with the following: murder in the first degree for the murder of 30-year-old Yaron Levshinsky, a foreign official and official guest of the United States. Mr. Lashinsky was here on official business for the State of Israel. The defendant Rodriguez is also charged with 2 counts of murder in the first degree for both Yaron Lashinsky along with 26-year-old Sarah Lynn Milgram of Kansas.
So that video right there is a video of the indictment of the murder from United States Rep. Janine. And coming up next, we're going to take a look at the Russian-Ukraine war. We're going to see what John Kelly of the United States has to say. John Kelly, United States representative of the United Nations, has to say with regards to the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, last night, Russia launched more than 300 drones and 8 missiles that struck residential areas in Kyiv, killing at least 7 people and injuring more than 60. The United States expresses condolences to the victims and their families and demands an end to such attacks. Ukraine, a sovereign member of the United Nations, has a right to defend itself. As President Trump announced on July 14th, the United States will sell defensive U.S. weapons to NATO allies, who can then send them on. Our support for Ukraine's defense cannot be compared to the supply of arms and material to Russia, which enables Russia to continue its full-scale invasion and occupation of Ukrainian territory.
All right, let's take a look at the second part where we see still John Kelly talking about what the United States has planned to do for Ukraine amidst the ongoing war and the optimism right after that of Donald Trump for a possible ceasefire.
Well, there's a very good prospect that they will. And we haven't determined where, but we had some very good talks with President Putin today. And there's a very good chance that we could be ending the round, ending the end of that road. That road was long and continues to be long, but there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon. I mean, we've been working on this a long time. There are thousands of young people dying, mostly soldiers, but also, missiles being hit into Kiev and other places. But in terms of soldiers, I think Russia's lost over 20,000 since the beginning of the year, 20,000. And I guess the estimate for Ukraine is about 9,000. It's a terrible situation. We want to get it stopped. You know, we don't have American soldiers there, but I feel I have an obligation to get it stopped. This was not my war. This war would have never started, not even a chance. And it didn't start for 4 years. It went 4 years and it didn't start. But this is Biden's war. This was on his watch. And, you know, it's funny. We had no land was taken from Trump. It was taken from Bush. It was taken from Biden. The whole thing they would take from Biden if it weren't for us. But it was taken by Obama. Take a look at what was taken with all of the land that was taken. Nothing was taken by Russia from us. Not 1 ounce of land was taken. I'm here to get the thing over with. It would have never started if I were president. And we're here to get it stopped and get the deaths.
Well, the peace-loving people of the world joined Donald Trump in his optimism of bringing the war in Ukraine to an end. But then in Washington, the Trump administration has unveiled a sweeping expansion of tariffs targeting Chinese technology products and electric vehicles. The move comes amid growing concerns in the United States over intellectual property theft, national security vulnerabilities, and what officials describe as an unfair trade imbalance with Beijing. The new tariffs apply to a broader range of Chinese goods, including lithium-ion batteries, solar panel components, and advanced semiconductors industries, central to both countries' race for tech dominance. Notably, electric vehicles manufactured in China will now face tariffs of up to 100%, a dramatic jump intended to curb what the United States trade officials call a market flooding by state-subsidized Chinese firms. United States manufacturers have alleged and largely welcomed the decision, especially in the automotive and energy sector. However, consumer groups warn that the expanded tariffs could lead to higher prices for electronics, solar products, and electric vehicles in the United States market, potentially complicating the nation's clean energy transition. China has criticized the move and signaled it may respond with its own trade barriers or legal action through the World Trade Organization. Some analysts caution that this latest escalation could trigger retaliatory steps affecting American agricultural exports and other strategic industries. Now, while the United States administration insists the tariffs are designed to protect American innovation and jobs, questions remain about the long-term impact on global supply chains already strained by years of post-pandemic realignment. Well, the Trump administration has also activated a sweeping series of reciprocal tariffs on imports from other countries, not just China. Taking effect today, the 7th of August, 2025, this tariff rates now range between 15% and 41%, affecting goods from key trading partners, including the European Union, Japan, and South Korea, despite prior negotiations to avoid higher levies. In a targeted move, the United States has imposed an additional 25% tariff on Indian imports, raising the effective rate to 50%, a direct penalty for India's continued importation of Russian oil amidst Russian sanctions. United States officials cite national security concerns, framing the tariff as part of efforts to discourage energy purchases that fund Russia's war mission. However, analysts argue the measure may have limited real-world impact. A commentary by Reuters observes that it doesn't directly affect Russian oil flow and may fail to deter such purchases, especially since India often refines and resells that oil in global markets. The tariff has heightened diplomatic strains and clouded future economic cooperations, including previously optimistic projections aimed at growing bilateral trade. Well, over to more sanctions from the United States. In a pilot program commencing August 20th, 2025, the United States visa applicants from Zambia and Malawi will be required to post refundable bonds of $5,000 US, $10,000 US, or $15,000 US when applying for B1, B2 visitors visa. The amount is determined during the visa interview and refundable upon compliance with travel terms. Bonds are part of a broader strategy to reduce visa overstays by citizens of countries identified as high risk. Additionally, visa holders under this program must enter and exit the United States through designated airports: Boston, Logan, JFK, New York, or Dulles, Virginia. These measures represent a shift towards financial deterrence in visa policy aimed at upholding immigration system integrity, but drawing concern from advocacy groups over its economic and diplomatic consequences. Well, as Washington implements bold trade restrictions and tighter visa controls, the economic ripple effects extend globally, from skyrocketing costs for consumers to strained diplomatic ties. Ahead, we'll explore how America's renewed focus on trade and security is shaping the geopolitics of energy and finance. But for now, we head on to the very last report on the Flash News. In the African scene, a sad report in Ghana today. The nation is mourning a devastating loss of leadership and lives. A military Z-9 helicopter crashed on August 6, 2026, yesterday, in the Adansi area of the Ashanti region, claiming the lives of all 8 individuals on board. Amongst those killed were Defense Minister Edward Omane Boma and Environment, Science and Technology Minister Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, along with 3 members of the Ghana Air Force crew, the Vice Chair of the ruling National Democratic Congress, Samuel Sarpong, and Senior National Security Advisor Muniru Mohammed. The helicopter had departed from the capital Accra, heading towards Obuasi for an official event addressing illegal mining when radar contact was lost. The wreckage was later located in a forested area. President John Dramani Mahama has declared 3 days of national mourning. The Ghanaian military, along with government officials, are leading crisis response efforts, while Parliament has paused parliamentary activities. In the days ahead, President Mahama has appointed Finance Minister Kasiel Atto Forson to serve as acting Defense Minister, while continuing in his existing post. This appointment aims to maintain continuity in the Defense Ministry during the interim period. The cause of the crash is still under investigation, and aviation authorities have launched a formal probe. Ghana's leadership faced renewed scrutiny over military aviation safety and the stability of national governance structures. Now, as the world shifts through political hardlines, economic power plays, and the human cost of war, one thing remains clear: no nation operates in isolation, because every policy, every conflict, and every silence echoes beyond borders. This brings us to the end of the Flash News today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll leave you now with ABC Amba TV images.